Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is open. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear the verb open used is to mean to move, adjust, or come apart so as to leave a space allowing access and or a view. So as you think about this first definition, there are so many different ways we could use this. We could talk about opening a door, opening a window. It could even be referring to opening our eyes or our mouth. A second way you might hear the verb open used is to mean to unfold or spread out. If you're a person who still likes to use paper maps, right, might need to open the map to be able to view the full picture that is contained within it. A third way you might hear the verb open used is mean to establish a new business or a new enterprise. A fourth way to use the verb open is to refer to either someone or something being made more available or more receptive or widely known. Sometimes with this definition, we might think about opening up our minds to new ideas or new information. That would be maybe the more receptive piece of it. You should know that open is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, all we need to do is add ing to form opening. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are made by adding ed. The base verb ends like this: open, with an n sound. So our past tense ending is going to make a d sound. Opened, opened. Now let's take a moment to look at some phrasal verbs with open. There's really just one we're going to talk about today. It has a number of different meanings, and we're going to focus on three more commonly used ones. The first way you might hear open up used is to mean to start to talk freely about something. This phrasal verb has a tendency to be rather informal. An example sentence could be, he won't open up to a stranger. So this sentence is describing someone who's going to be more reserved, keep their thoughts, their feelings to themselves, versus sharing and talking freely. A second way you might hear the phrasal verb open up used is to refer to opening a shop or a store for the business day. An example of that: the ice cream shop opens up at 11 a.m. Now, I will note that you don't have to use up. So in my example sentence, I could say the ice cream shop opens at 11. And again, this would be understood. It's being made accessible to customers. A third way to use open up is, again, this idea of being made available or accessible. Here is an example sentence with that. Some new markets have opened up during the pandemic. So new avenues for businesses to sell their goods or offer their services for sale. That's what's being referred here. There are new ways to have paying customers. All this week, we've been focusing on the active versus passive voice, and we're going to continue doing that by looking at the present perfect today. So as a quick review, in case you're just tuning into this video first in the week, you should know that an active voice sentence begins with the person or the thing that is responsible for an action. Here's an example. Mike has cleaned the house. So in this sentence, we know Mike is responsible for the action of cleaning. Another example could be Jen has planted vegetables. Here we know Jen is responsible for the action of planting. But sometimes as you read or you listen, you're going to hear people use the passive voice. So a passive voice sentence is going to begin with the person or the thing that is acted on or that receives the action. In passive voice sentences, the person who is responsible for the action, they might not be included at all. Or if they are included, they're going to come at the end of the sentence after the preposition by. So I can take my first active voice sentence and change it into passive voice. I could say, the house has been cleaned. Or I could say, the house has been cleaned by Mike. With my second example, right, the vegetables received the action. They were the thing acted on. So I'm going to move that to the front of the sentence and say, vegetables have been planted. Or I could say, vegetables have been planted by Jen. And something that commonly comes up as I teach in person with actual students, not just on video, many students ask, well, why are we using this? Why does it exist? And there are several different ways or reasons that might motivate someone to use the passive voice. So the first is when they don't know which person or group of people is responsible for the action. Right? So this is kind of a way to work around it. We could still stay in active voice by using somebody or a person, right, when we don't know. But sometimes people don't like admitting that they don't know something. A second reason is you might know who's responsible, but that just isn't important. And that connects to our third reason that people use the passive voice. They want their readers or their listeners to really focus on the object, the thing or the person that's receiving the action. So by moving the object to the front of the sentence, they're putting more emphasis or focus on that object. A fourth reason you might consider using the passive voice is when you don't want to blame someone for something. So this is kind of a way to acknowledge something bad happened, but not assign blame to a particular person or group of people. So with all that in mind, now let's use our verb of the day, open, in the present perfect. And we'll do two sentences, one in active voice, one in passive. These sentences are going to be communicating the same ideas. I just wanted you to have examples in the difference between active and passive. So in the first sentence here, the Department of Transportation has opened the new highway extension. So in the active voice, I'm using have or has, depending on my subject, and then I'm using the participle form of the verb. And as I'm looking at my passive voice, I know I'm seeing I made a typo, I made a mistake. So our passive voice sentence should sound like this. The new highway extension has been opened. So in the passive voice, we're going to have three parts to our verb. We're going to use have or has, then we're going to use the participle been, and then we'll use the participle form of our verb. Okay, so pardon the typo, but a good reason to keep the audio on in these videos. Now let's talk about negative. To make negative present perfect sentences, we're going to insert not after have or has, and then we'll have the participle. You can see that in the sentence here. We haven't opened those windows in years. Okay? So we know we are responsible for the action of opening. But in negative passive voice, we're not going to know who's responsible for that action, and that might be okay. We can just say those windows haven't been opened in years. So the passive voice construction is have or has, depending what we're talking about. We're using have here because windows is plural. Then we have not, been, and then our participle form of the verb. Finally, let's take a look at yes or no questions. In the active voice, we want to start with have or has, whichever word matches our subject that comes next, and then we'll use the participle form of the verb. Has an identity thief opened accounts in your name? Okay. This differs slightly from the passive voice. We will start with have or has, But then what comes next is that object, the thing that was acted on. So here it's accounts. And then after that object, we'll use been and our participle. Have accounts been opened in your name? Now, let's spend a couple minutes looking at words that are related to our verb. And today we're just focusing on different parts of speech that are related to open. So we've talked about how open is a verb. It could also be a noun. When it's used as a noun, it's generally referring to a championship or a competition that doesn't have any restrictions as to who competes or who qualifies. You can see this usage in my example sentence. She's going to New York to watch the US Open in September. This is a really large international tennis tournament that is held just outside of New York City. We can also use open as an adjective. As an adjective, this has so many different meanings. I think I picked out 6 for us to look at, and that certainly wasn't them all. So one way to use open as an adjective is to mean not closed or not blocked up. So an example of that, be careful, the jar is open, right? So it's not closed, there's no lid. A second way we could use the adjective open is to mean exposed or uncovered. Sometimes you'll hear about an open fire, right? Meaning it's not contained in a fireplace, or it's just exposed. It's kind of like it sounds, it's open to everything around it. Another way we can use this uncovered is in connection to sports, right? So someone might say, pass me the ball, I'm open, right? So there's not another person guarding me or nearby to steal the ball. A third way to use the adjective open is to refer to being available for business. An example of that, the store stays open until 7. A fourth meaning for this adjective would be freely available or accessible. Sometimes on college campuses, you'll see signs or information that say things like counseling services are open to all or to all students, right? So it's meaning these services are available. They are accessible. A fifth way to use the adjective open is to mean involving no concealment, no restraint, or no deception, no lying. So, an example of this, we had an open discussion with all employees, right? So they weren't trying to hide anything, they weren't trying to lie as they talked about a particular issue. The last definition of the adjective open that we're going to look at is accessible to new ideas. This kind of connects back to the 4th definition of the verb we looked at earlier. So, an example of this, you need to keep an open mind when trying new foods, right? So here someone is being encouraged not to prejudge or make a decision about something. So they're keep yourself accessible to new ideas, new information. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.